In the world of railroads, ugly meant useless, until a backwards tinkerer bolted an off-center boiler onto a logging engine and dared it to survive where stallions and sleek locomotives failed. Engineers called it a joke. But when 10-ton logs had to cross mud, slopes of 45 degrees, and tracks too rough for any normal train, this lopsided machine clawed straight up the mountain. When the land chews up everything you send, the strangest design might be your only hope. What drove crews to try? And why did this weird contraption become the one tool that could build the West? Mud swallowed boots and horses alike. In the forests of northern Michigan, the ground was a trap, slick in the spring, frozen ruts by winter, and nothing but misery in between. Trees towered above, some so thick it took a whole crew just to notch one down. When a 10-ton log broke loose, it didn't roll, it thundered, flattening anything in its way. Men tried to muscle these giants down 45-degree slopes with teams of horses, but the animals collapsed under the weight, legs buckling, lungs spent. Even when someone managed to lash a log to a crude sled, the real battle started at the bottom. Rivers of mud, tracks laid quick and cheap, rails bending under every load. The bosses brought in steam engines, hoping raw power would do what muscle couldn't. But those shiny rod-driven locomotives weren't built for chaos. Their wheels spun, hissing and sparking whenever a rail dipped or the ground gave way. It didn't matter how fast they looked on a poster. Out here, speed meant nothing. Crews watched train after train stall and slide, iron wheels digging trenches instead of moving timber. On the worst days, a single mistake could send a car tumbling off a rickety trestle 200 feet straight down. No one remembered the names of the men who vanished in the mud or the horses that died in their traces. The forest didn't care. It chewed up every machine and man sent against it, leaving only broken iron and stumps behind. Rod engines looked like they belonged on parade, all polished brass and big drive wheels. But the minute they hit a logging grade, those wheels started spinning in place. Steam hissed, sparks flew, and the whole train shuddered as iron met mud. On flat, sturdy rails, a rod engine could fly. On these tracks, warped and half-buried and laid by men in a hurry, they were helpless. The real enemy wasn't distance or speed, it was gravity. Any grade over 5% turned a regular locomotive into a sitting duck. The steel tires lost their bite. Instead of moving forward, the wheels just polished the rails, throwing showers of sparks and burning away the last hope of traction. Crews tried sand, grit, even laying down fresh branches for grip. Sometimes the wheels caught. More often, the engine just dug itself deeper. When the track twisted or dipped, the rods flexed and jerked, trying to yank the whole machine off the rails. On switchbacks, the cars would lurch sideways, and if the load shifted, the train could tip, spilling logs and men into the ravine below. Every breakdown cost a day's work, and every slip meant another crew lost to the woods. The rod engines weren't just stalling, they were quitting. They couldn't claw their way up the mountain, no matter how much steam they threw at the problem. The forest had met its match, and it wasn't impressed by shiny wheels. Ephraim Shay didn't waste time with pretty. He looked at a problem and he reached for a wrench. The first thing people noticed about his machine was the boiler, shoved a full 8 inches off center, like the whole thing had taken a punch. It looked broken, but that crooked line was no accident. On the right side, he had stacked a set of heavy vertical cylinders, straight out of a marine engine, the kind you would find bolted to the floor of a riverboat. Those pistons hammered up and down, driving a long shaft that ran the length of the locomotive. Gears, joints, and iron all added up to a lot of weight, and it all pulled to one side. A regular locomotive would have tipped or twisted itself apart on tracks this rough. Shay's answer was simple: move the boiler. That big tank of water and steel became a counterweight, balancing out the whole mess of gears and drive shafts on the other side. 8 inches to the left, and suddenly the center of gravity was right where it needed to be. The machine could crawl along switchbacks and teeter on rotten trestles without rolling over. People called it ugly, they called it wrong, but Shay knew better. That offset wasn't a mistake. it was perfect balance. Every inch of that lopsided boiler kept the wheels on the rails and the logs moving down the mountain. While the experts laughed, Shay's design just kept marching, steady, stubborn, and unbreakable. Ephraim Shay walked his lopsided contraption right up to the US Patent Office. The clerk stared, trying to make sense of the boiler hanging off to one side and the tangle of gears running down the right. This was not how a locomotive was supposed to look. It looked like a sidewinder, a machine trying to crawl off the tracks. Shay did not care. He filed the papers anyway on March 30th, 1881. By June 14th, the patent was stamped and sealed, number 242,992. Legal, official, and just as odd as it had ever been. The old guard in the railroad business had a field day. They called it a toy. They called it a joke. Some said it looked like a busted farm implement, not a real engine. The nickname stuck, Sidewinder. The patent office might have signed off, but every engineer with a clean shirt and a college degree lined up to laugh. The drawings made the rounds in trade journals, and the letters poured in, "Who in their right mind puts the boiler on the side?" The mockery was loud and public. Curiosity has a way of creeping in where mockery starts. Shay's machine was not just a pile of bad ideas welded together, it was something different, something that did not quit when the mud got deep or the rails twisted out from under it. The patent gave it a fighting chance. Now it was time to put it on the rails and let the doubters see what happened when a so-called joke met a real mountain. Every inch of the Shay was built for grip, not glamour. Where rod engines powered only a couple of big wheels, the Shay's secret was its long drive shaft, a spinning steel backbone running down the right side, lined with gears and joints. That shaft did not just turn one axle, it powered every wheel under the locomotive, front to back. Even the wheels under the tender got in on the action. That meant no dead weight, no slackers. Every wheel clawed at the rails, fighting for traction. The magic was in the joints. Universal joints like the ones you would find on a truck driveshaft let the whole system flex and pivot. When the track dipped into a mud hole or twisted around a tight curve, those joints kept the gears meshed and the power flowing. The trucks, the wheel assemblies, could swing and swivel, taking the worst the forest could throw at them. The Shay did not care if the rails were straight, crooked, or half buried in muck. The drive shaft just kept turning, sending torque to every corner. Most trains hated curves. Their rods would bind or jam, and the whole machine would lurch sideways. The Shay just shrugged and kept crawling. The trucks could pivot under the frame, following switchbacks so sharp they would make a city engineer faint. That is how you got a 60-foot engine around a bend tighter than a city trolley. The universal joints soaked up the punishment, the gears kept biting, and nothing slipped. This was not a racehorse. It was a 4x4 truck on rails. The kind of machine that did not care how ugly the job was, as long as the wheels kept turning. Every log, every load, every brutal climb. If there was steel under it, the Shay could drag it. All-wheel drive, a century before anyone put it on a pickup. The rods just spun and sparked. The Shay dug in and marched. The Shay didn't run, it marched. Every turn of those vertical pistons fed a gear train built for one thing: torque. Where a rod engine's piston pushed a wheel all the way around with each stroke, the Shay's system was different. Each piston stroke only turned the wheel about 1/3 of a revolution. That meant the engine had to work 3 times harder to go the same distance, but the payoff was pure muscle. This is gear reduction in its rawest form, trade speed for unstoppable force. On paper, the numbers didn't impress the city boys. 12 miles per hour, flat out. But out here, nobody cared about speed limits. What mattered was that a Shay could pull 100 tons of green timber straight up a 10% grade. 14% if you were feeling lucky and had a good crew. That's a slope so steep, most trains would stall before they even got started. The Shay just kept digging in. Every wheel driving, every tooth in the gears locked tight. The rhythm of the machine told its own story. 3 cylinders, each firing in a rapid-fire sequence, sent pulses down the driveshaft. The exhaust hammered out a steady machine gun beat, echoing through the trees as the locomotive clawed its way up the mountain. No slipping, no wasted motion, just relentless grinding power. It didn't matter if the rails were twisted, the ties half buried, or the track was laid on nothing but mud and hope. The Shay didn't spin its wheels and pray for grip. It grabbed the steel and refused to let go. All that mattered was getting the load to the mill, no matter how ugly the job or how steep the climb. That's what made the Shay a legend among men who measured their days in sweat and sawdust. Orders started rolling in faster than logs down a chute. The little shop in Lima, Ohio, had never seen anything like it. They had built farm equipment, a few standard engines, steady work, nothing fancy. Then the Shay design hit their floor, and suddenly every logging boss from Michigan to California wanted one. By 1903, Lima was stamping out the heaviest Shay yet, a monster weighing 140 tons, built to claw up 6% grades in the New Mexico desert. Payroll swelled as men lined up for jobs on the factory floor. Blacksmiths, machinists, laborers, whole families moved to Lima for steady work, drawn by the promise of iron and steam. The town grew with each locomotive that rolled out the doors. The numbers tell the story. 2,770 Shay locomotives left the Lima Works between the 1880s and the end of steam. Each one was a piece of pure muscle, built for the worst tracks in the world. The shop floor thundered day and night, hammers ringing, gears spinning, smoke pouring from the stacks. Every shipment meant another patch of wilderness opened up, another logging camp, another mine, another mill running full tilt. The Shay was not just moving timber, it was driving paychecks, building neighborhoods, and turning Lima into the locomotive capital of the Midwest. As the orders stacked up, the design kept getting bigger, stronger, meaner. 3 truck Shays for the mountains, 4 truck giants for desert grades. The factory adapted and grew with every new challenge. By the time the rod engines were gasping for breath on flat rails, Lima's geared brutes were already halfway up the next mountain, dragging the American economy along behind them. The Shay did not just conquer the woods, it built a city of steel, sweat, and stubborn pride. The West was a battleground of timber and stone, and the Shay was the only machine that could fight its way to the top. Out where the redwoods grew wider than a boxcar and the tracks clung to mountainsides like spider silk, the rules were simple: survive or disappear. Crews laid rails through forests so thick the sun barely touched the ground. They built trestles 200 feet above the river, trusting their lives to wood and iron that swayed in the wind. On those dizzying bridges, a rod engine would have been a death sentence. The Shay kept moving, every wheel biting down, every gear locked tight, dragging 10-ton logs over gaps that made strong men weak in the knees. Logging outfits from California to Washington staked their fortunes on the Shay. It did not matter if the track was barely more than a rumor, winding through switchbacks and mud holes, or if the grade shot up so steep you would swear it was a ladder. The Shay climbed them all. 14% grades, straight up the side of a mountain, did not slow it down. Where others slipped, it clawed forward. Where others fell, it held the line. Some of those old iron goats are still alive, still working. At Cass Scenic Railroad in West Virginia, Shay No. 5 hauls tourists up 11% grades, the same way it once hauled logs. The sound has not changed, a machine gun beat echoing through the trees, gears churning, smoke pouring from the stack. Every restored Shay is a survivor, a living piece of muscle and steel that refuses to die. They have outlasted the forests they helped clear, the mills they fed, even the men who built them. The Shay was not pretty, it was not fast, but it conquered mountains that broke everything else. That is not just engineering, that is a legacy. Every year, restored Shays still claw up mountains most modern trains wouldn't dare touch, a living rebuke to the idea that beauty means strength. In a world obsessed with speed and polish, The real workhorses are judged by what they can endure. Sometimes, the machines that look wrong are built exactly right. Thanks for riding along. Drop your thoughts below.